to say, is it, on a Uranus show? I've got to do some back-end stuff.
Don't get me started. I'm just getting good at not saying Uranus, man. I'm saying Uranus.
I can see it's after midnight.
You're already screwing me up. I was so good last shot. I only made one mistake. I was so proud of myself. All right. So we're live. Show's going to start in 3 minutes, guys. The show will start in 3 minutes. Counting down on the Slooh.com homepage. All right. Let me do this.
I do find that in the shows that I'm doing, there are just some words I just get a total mental block at. You know, it's kind of 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and just can't spit it out.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
It's a shame about T1.
Oh, there we go. So is T1? It's too bad. So it's gone for the show.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's all right. We got this other show. Show will begin in about 2 minutes, guys. 2 minutes. I'm gonna do my entrance again. See, I think people like that. I'll be like I'm Bob Barker coming out for Price is Right.
People do say that you pace up and down, Pat, like a polar bear stuck in a cage in the zoo.
I try. I gotta get a.
You gotta nail your boots to the floor. That's what you need.
I know. It's a bad habit. I don't know. I'm trying to stop, but I get too excited on these shows. Here, I got a chair right here. I'll try to hang on to it. All right, guys, we're about 1 minute and 30 seconds out before we're starting officially. 1 minute, 30 seconds. We're 1 minute from start time. 1 minute. Okay. Hi everyone, this is Patrick Paolucci with Slooh Space Camera. It is Saturday night, 7 o'clock Pacific in the West Coast of the United States, 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and 0200 UTC. Thanks for joining us for our second show on the Harvest Moon and Uranus opposition event. We're here tonight with longtime Slooh editor and friend and Astronomy Magazine columnist Bob Berman, as well as Slooh engineer Paul Cox. Paul will be controlling the, well, actually, he was controlling the T1, the Canary Islands Observatory. Unfortunately, that observatory, that we've exceeded our wind limits out in that facility at the Canary Islands Observatory, but our T2 scope is still online, which will give you live views of both the moon and Uranus. Right now, we're looking at the moon. If you're on Slooh.com, you can channel select. As many of you know out there, that's where the main show takes place. So please take a peek at it at Slooh.com. That's SLOOH.com. You can also pin photos. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all those great tools, social tools to keep in touch of what our next show is. You can also see this panel live. So, Bob, before we get started, thanks again for coming on. I appreciate you guys both being here. I know, Paul, it's very late out in the UK. It's probably, what is it, 3 in the morning out there right now for you, Paul?
Yep.
Yeah, it's late, so we appreciate you helping us out tonight. Bob, I think we should start the show out the same way we started before. And I want to see, are you green? It looks like you're you got your green look going on.
Yeah, it's changing colors depending on the mood.
Okay.
And
okay, there you go.
It's the night of the harvest moon, so how can it not affect us?
Exactly. Well, Bob's got this great green glow going on one of these backlights. So I'm hoping that it kind of matches what's going on with Uranus. But Bob, we talked about in the first show, and I think we should start out the second show this way. Tell us a little bit why I grew up pronouncing Uranus, because it throws me off all the time, and everyone I know calls it Uranus. We all think it's a funny name, especially when we were little kids. And even today, I was watching the chat rooms, and all the guys talk about the shows. There's never-ending jokes about Uranus this, Uranus, funny, but they're all thinking the wrong thing. Why is that? Why do we still pronounce it Uranus when it's really
sort
Uranus?
I don't know. It's an Americanism. If you look in the encyclopedia, if you look at any pronunciation guide, it's Uranus. It's the name of a Greek and Roman god, and that's the correct way. So many people do say Uranus, and we're not going to get snotty or snooty or tell people, hey, you can't say it like that. But if you want to say the seventh planet correctly, Uranus.
Right. So I'm just letting people know that our T1 observatory is closed. That's the one we were going to have all moon. We had it on the earlier show, but unfortunately the wind gust picked up and we were forced to close it. We are running stuff out of the T2 observatory for both the moon and Uranus. However, I guess Paul can fill us in on this one. Like, the moon is so bright on the wide field that we're not going to get much out of that one. Paul, how are we looking on the T2 high mag? Is it going to be coming in, or what's your thoughts on that? Okay.
It will be. Both though are affected badly by the proximity of the moon. I actually to actually set these missions up for Uranus tonight, I had to override our settings. We normally have a kind of moon exclusion zone because you just can't image. It gives a horrible background gradient on the images, which is what we're seeing here. And in that T2 high mag image that we're seeing, actually at the 1 o'clock position, that is Uranus, and we're just seeing one of its small moons, which I think is Titania. I think Bob says it slightly differently, but I would say that Titania, just below it. So
Right. Awesome. So guys, if you're listening to this in G+ or YouTube, Paul will screen share stuff in from this is actually screen sharing in from the homepage of Slooh. You can channel select it, so feel free to go to slooh.com and you'll see the panel as well. And I'm also going to, all the chat that we look at is from the slooh.com homepage at the Slooh conversation window or box. So if you want to ask Bob a question or myself or Paul, go there to do it. I know you guys can chat or ask questions at YouTube, but we don't monitor that one actively because it's just too hard for us to go in multiple areas. So you come to slooh.com, in the Slooh conversation box, post something, and we'll try to get to it. So, Bob, why don't you tell us more about the harvest moon and what it's all about, and how it relates to the blue moon as well?
Right. Well, the blue moon is simply the second full moon in any given month. What they have in common, Pat, is that they're both full moons, and full moons generally don't have names. Now, it's true the American Indians, the Native Americans, the Algonquins, and the colonists had names for each month's full moon. One was the straw moon, one was the strawberry moon, but they've fallen out of use. And these days we only have one full moon each year that has a popular name, and that's the harvest moon. That's simply the full moon closest to the first day of fall, closest to the autumnal equinox, and that's tonight. So we have a full moon that's famous, and it behaves differently. It's not just a label, a term. This is a moon that's very different from every other full moon during the year, because this is a moon that rises. Last night it rose at sunset. Tonight it rises only 20 minutes later. Places like England, it's only 15 minutes later. Tomorrow night it'll rise only another 20 minutes later. That's very different from normal moon behavior. Usually the moon comes up a full hour later each night, and in the spring the full moon comes up an hour and a half later. So you get the full moon in the springtime, and one night later it's 90 minutes before you see it again. 2 nights later it's 3 hours later, that's closer to midnight, and in other words, it's gone. So you get only one night of the full moon, really, and then after that you have to stay up late. Not now. Right now we've got the harvest moon every single night, rising at almost the same time, night after night after night. That's what makes this full moon different from any other. And I think Paul will tell you that by chance, this is I think the exact hour of the full moon. This is exactly round full.
Yeah, another 10 minutes, yeah.
Yeah, this is it. So we're seeing now at Slooh the precise time of the harvest moon. Look at that. Isn't that gorgeous? Notice there's no craters, no shadows on the moon, no mountains that are visible because the
Actually,
sunlight...
Bob, sorry, I'm wrong there. It's another hour and 10 minutes to go.
Okay,
Sorry.
so we are really coming up on it. In other words, this is the night, and this is very close to the very, very time of the harvest moon. It's very exciting. And look closely at the moon. At this time of year, the moon gets so hot from the sun shining straight down at us that it reflects heat back to Earth like a bathroom heater. And Earth's atmosphere, our lower atmosphere, our troposphere, becomes 4/100ths of an inch warmer during this lunar phase, during the full moon, than any other time. And that might be the reason why there's more cloudiness at the time of the full moon than any other phase. In other words, it really does affect our weather. It doesn't affect mental behavior. You know, we have the word lunacy and lunatic, but it turns out this has been investigated, Pat, calls to crisis centers and mental illness hotlines and admissions to mental hospitals do not go up at the time of the full moon. So the full moon apparently doesn't really drive us crazy, but it does affect our weather a little bit.
Interesting. So we're looking, if you're on the home page, you're looking on T2 wide field and high mag, you're looking at the moon. Our T1 observatory is closed due to high winds, and so we're not going to be able to have a feed of that. That T2 wide field high mag will be switching back and forth between Uranus and the moon. So we'll be alternating back and forth within 5-minute time frames. And with the full moon, it is a little bit more difficult to see Uranus tonight, but we are going to be showing it because technically it's at opposition tonight, so we wanted to show it to you live tonight with the full moon.
Which means it's closest to Earth of the year. Imagine that, the harvest moon and the planet, the 7th planet, the weirdest planet because it's on its side and it's green and it's really different from other planets. They're next to each other in the sky. We have the most famous full moon, and we also have the 7th planet at its closest to Earth for the year. You know, what does it mean? I don't know if you can do any meaning to that, but it's kind of cool that it's happening, and we're covering it, of course, live.
Exactly. So, Bob, why don't you tell us a little bit about Uranus, when it was discovered, who discovered it, and give us a little backdrop on it, if you don't mind.
Oh, it's the great William Herschel, who became the most famous astronomer in the world by doing that, because nobody ever suspected there was another planet out there that no one knew about. We always knew there were 5 planets, 1 sun, 1 moon. Nobody thought there were invisible, unseen, hidden planets. So when he found it, and it's absolutely brilliant through any telescope, including his telescope, it's not surprising that he would have stumbled on it. He thought it was a comet. It took a couple of years to realize that it was a new planet, and the world was just shocked, astonished that there could be unseen planets out there. And this was in 1781 on March 13th. It's such a famous date in astronomy that later on in 1930, Clyde Tombaugh, who discovered Pluto, withheld the announcement of it, even though he discovered it in February, on photographs he had taken in January. But he didn't announce it until March 13th, so that it would be the anniversary of the discovery of Uranus. So a little bit of arcana there, or trivia for everybody. If your birthday is March 13th, then you have the same birthday as the discovery of 2 planets, although Pluto's now been demoted. It's not really a planet anymore, but okay. You know what we mean. There's the full moon now, and right below the full moon, the strange green, the greenest planet in the known universe, hovering below it.
Why is it green, Bob? Why don't you tell us more about that?
As sunlight, which is made up of all the colors of the rainbow, hits Uranus, the methane gas in its atmosphere sucks up the red color. It absorbs the red, but it lets the green and the blue be reflected back to our eyes. So because of that, there's no red left, and that gives it a green color. Jupiter and Saturn don't have any really overall striking colors. We know because Jupiter is one of our favorite colors here at Slooh, colors to witness in the individual sections of the planet. You know, there's a red spot, there's brown belts, there's blue deep parts of the atmosphere, but the overall planet is not strikingly one color or another. Neither is Saturn, neither is Venus. It doesn't have any color. So it's only when you get out to Uranus that you get to this striking green, and then the next planet out, Neptune, has a blue, although it's not as striking as Uranus is. And the only other planet with a striking color is Mars, of course, looking orange.
So if you're looking on the Hangout window, Paul has pulled up an image. Paul, when was this image taken from T2?
This is a few days ago on the 24th.
The 24th. So we're looking at a high mag view just a couple days ago where the moon wasn't obstructing the view, and Paul's showing here is you can see the planet Uranus with some of its moons, and I believe you got a star. Is that a star to the left up there too?
Yeah, 44 Pisceum, which meant that this is actually a mono image. It's actually a Slooh member's image. It's not my image, but it's a kind of yellow-orange star. I looked at it tonight. I looked at Uranus and this star next to each other tonight, and you really see the contrast between this lovely orange-yellow versus what I always think of more of a duck egg blue for Uranus, really. But I know people disagree with me on that. So,
right.
Yes, you might be colorblind, Paul.
That's a good possibility. I'm an architect, so that may account for some of my designs.
I mean, I think it's pretty wild when you look at this particular planet. I was looking at some of the stats. I mean, it takes Uranus 84 Earth years to complete one orbit. That's pretty crazy, and has 27 moons and has a ring system. And I think, Bob, we'd always know that Saturn's got the ring system, but when did we learn about that Uranus had a ring system?
The Voyager 2 spacecraft, which was the first time that we'd ever visited Uranus up close, which was on, if I remember right, January 24th, 1986. That was Yes, that was the only close approach and close-up views that we've had of Uranus.
We stayed close, though, Bob. I was surprised today when I read this. Close for Voyager 2 was 51,000 miles. So that's as close as we've actually been to this planet. And a lot of other missions that were kind of fated to go back there, they've all kind of been scrubbed. It's always been a very low priority for all of the agencies.
Yes, and that was the only spacecraft we had there. Arguably, the more interesting thing came from discovering detail on its satellites, particularly Miranda, which was one of the strangest objects you could ever hope to see. It was almost a collage of different kinds of geography spliced together from different kinds of features, including a giant chevron, a V shape. So it's very worthwhile that trip past Uranus and its odd moon systems. But Pat, yes, 84 years to go around the sun, which means it spends 7 years in each zodiacal constellation. Right now it's in Pisces. So slowly it chugs around. 84 years for one visit, but the strange thing is its axis is tilted. It's totally on its side. It has a 98-degree tilt. So when it goes through space, it doesn't travel equator first. It travels pole first. And because the tilt of your axis determines your seasons, it means that each of its seasons lasts 42 years. So it's got winter for 42 years, and then summer for another 42 years. So if you lived at the North Pole of Uranus, where by the way, the property values are very low, the taxes are very low because you have no sunshine for 42 straight years. You don't see the sun. That could be a lifetime. You're there, no sun. But then once the sun rises, you've got the sun in your sky without ever setting. for the next 42 years.
Oh, that's crazy. That's wild. I didn't even know that. So if you're just joining us, we have on tonight, we have Bob Berman, longtime Slooh editor, but probably mostly known as Astronomy Magazine columnist and author of many books. And Bob's latest book is The Sun's Heartbeat. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. I'm going to put mine up here, give you some good props. I've read this book. It's a great book on the sun. You should get it. It's called The Sun's Heartbeat. We're also tonight with Paul Cox, Slooh engineer, been with us since 2004, and he's controlling our observatories in the Canary Islands, which is off the coast of Africa, and he's in the UK. And Paul brought up something about membership. And membership, guys, funds all the programming we do on Slooh free to the public. Please consider it at slooh.com. Just click the membership button top right. Not only do you support the cause of the free program we put out for the world to enjoy, but you also get an opportunity to control our observatories to objects all over the sky, nebula, galaxies, planets, what have you, whatever your delight is, even including comets, asteroids. We have a robust community who love to interact and share their thoughts, and they're all over the world. So it's a unique community, so please consider that. Also, we're running a campaign under slooh.com/MySky. You can see it on the homepage. It's a unique campaign focused around the upcoming launch of our iPad app in November with unique perks that are only going to be offered for another couple weeks. So I'd take advantage of those if you are considering membership, because those are going away. But you get some goodies as part of that we don't normally offer. So look at those as well. So Bob, here we go on the next show. I'm looking at the chat room to see what's going on and see if we've got any questions here. Just so people know, our T1 observatory is closed due to the weather. It's too gusty, the winds are bad. But we do have T2, but it's going to be alternating back and forth between the moon and Uranus. But the Uranus shots right now, the moon is so bright, it's not as clear as it normally is. But we're still going to have a good show anyway and talk about it. Bob, tell us more about Uranus. I think people, what other details can you tell? I mean, the one you just talked about, 42 years of no sun and 42 years with sun. I didn't hear you talk about that on the first show. So I'm learning something new every time we talk about it. Is there anything else that you could share with us about Uranus?
Okay, sure. Well, third largest planet in the solar system after Jupiter and Saturn. So it's a heavyweight, 32,000 miles in diameter, which means you could have about 4 planet Earths in a row to equal it. So it's a giant ball. Unfortunately, it's a ball of mostly boring hydrogen and helium. That's what the stars are made of. That's what the sun is mostly made of. So Uranus is representative of star stuff, but it doesn't have enough mass to create enough pressure in its core to get hot enough to start nuclear fusion. So that's why it'll never be a star. Fortunately, what makes it interesting is its trace materials. It's got ammonia and methane, which is swamp gas, natural gas. If you had oxygen, you could light a match, and Uranus would just keep burning. As it is, Pat, I don't know if you know this. A lot of people don't realize that Earth is the only planet in the known universe that has fire. We're the only planet that has an oxygen atmosphere and things to burn. There's nothing on Mars that can burn. There's nothing on Mercury that can burn. It's just rocks. Here we've got stuff that will burn if you set it on fire, and we've got lightning that will set things on fire, and we've got an oxygen atmosphere. So this is the only place with fire. Uranus is a place that is the only place that has seasons that are 42 years long, where you're on your side, where you look at the, as you're going around the sun, you're traveling pole first. It's crazy stuff, but I love those 5 moons. It's got 5 kind of medium-sized moons. The largest is 1,000 miles across, with very pretty names of Miranda and Ariel and Umbriel and Titania and Oberon, the names from Shakespearean plays. In fact, you know what? I would trust Paul's pronunciation better than mine, because a lot of our listeners and viewers probably don't know this, but the people who bring you Slooh are all over the world. Pat's in Southern California. I'm in the mountains here of the Appalachians in upstate New York, and Paul is in England, but he's a lot closer to Shakespeare. And since 2 of the satellites, 3 of the satellites of Uranus come from Shakespearean plays, I would defer to you on the pronunciation of them.
I'm not saying anything. For fear I may incriminate myself.
So, Paul, I got a quick question for you. What people are asking, what's going on in the Y field right now? What's the
Sometimes the processing fails. I've noticed that recently. The processing fails on that. So what's called the stretch of the image doesn't work properly. So it's not actually overexposed, but it generates an image that looks overexposed. So that's the problem there. And it happens every once in a while with a T2 wide field on the moon.
Excellent. So
yeah,
another question.
And that's the other aspect too. That with us being in other parts of the world, the telescope we're using is in yet another part of the world, on the Canary Islands, with its famous great seeing conditions. I'm sorry, Pat, I interrupted you.
You did, Bob. Shame on you. Just kidding. Okay, we had another question. Is it possible to view Uranus and the Moon at the same time through my amateur telescope?
Well, no, because they're far enough apart that it's a few moon widths. Uranus dangles a couple of moon widths below the moon, and a telescope would be lucky with a half-degree field of view. You could get the moon in. You might be able to get another half a moon width in your field of view, but you wouldn't be able to stretch it to get both in at the same field of view tonight. Wouldn't you say so, Paul?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I was using a pair of 18 by 50 binoculars tonight, and it was about 2 or 3 whole fields of view across before from scanning from the moon down to Uranus.
Right. So, now, Paul, in the T2, I'm sorry, Bob, in the T2 high mag, is that Uranus top right? I'm assuming is that one of the moons right there, or is that not a moon in the top right?
I'm still. My image probably hasn't caught up with yours. I'm still looking at the moon here.
Okay.
So,
and and we should also talk about the strange name that it had. You know, all the planets have names of Roman gods, just strictly Roman gods, not Greek gods. And so when Uranus was discovered, William Herschel first wanted to name it after the king. Figured, we mentioned this earlier, get on the good side of the king and you'll get patronage and you're set for life. And actually that's what happened with him. He became the most famous astronomer in the world. So he wanted to name it the Star of George, King George, same pathetic king that lost the Americas for England. Fortunately, wiser heads prevailed, and some wanted to name it Herschel and call the planet Herschel. But it was decided, no, let's keep the Roman god tradition, and we'll use Uranus, who is in mythology the father of Saturn, if I remember right, and also the god of the sky, the god of astronomy. So in a way, the planet Uranus, despite its mispronunciation, its widespread mispronunciation, is the most appropriate planet for astronomy. It's the god of astronomy, Uranus.
All right. So we're down to our last 6 minutes on this particular show. I wanted to bring up that we have been doing for the last, I don't know, almost 30 days now, a live show every day on Slooh.com. You can see the upcoming events always counting down. For instance, Paul is doing a show, it looks like in about 20 hours. Now, we do change our schedule daily on what's happening in space. Sometimes a comet will whiz by that we weren't expecting, or an asteroid, or a supernova might blow, or whatever it might be. Slooh's there to cover it, so the schedule is always being updated. But we do have a range of shows already counting down for next week that Paul will be doing, or myself, or Bob, or a bunch of others in some capacity. We also do live solar shows, and so definitely come back to Slooh and check it out. We're also having a special program coming up for the total solar eclipse. Bob will actually be on site out in Cairns, Australia, providing a broadcast for us. We'll have multiple live feeds coming in, so don't miss that one. That's going to be spectacular. So, you guys, with the last 5 minutes, Bob, what else can you tell us about the Harvest Moon or Uranus before we get off tonight?
Well, with the Harvest Moon, let's end it by the Harvest Moon talk by saying the second most famous full moon of the year is the Hunter's Moon. This was the most famous, tonight's moon, the full moon, whose name has still remained in popular use. But the next full moon, the one in October, is the Hunter's Moon. It's less dramatic. The Harvest Moon, as we said, is the only one that rises at around the same time, night after night after night, for several nights in a row. The Hunter's Moon almost does the same thing, but it's not as dramatic as the harvest moon is. As for Uranus, one thing maybe we could mention is that some imagine that from Uranus, because it's 19 times farther from the sun than we are, that at that distance the sun is just a bright star. In truth, the sun is 400 times less bright than it is from Earth, as seen from Uranus, but that is still blindingly bright. If you lived on one of the moons of Uranus, you couldn't live on Uranus because it's always overcast. But if you could be on one of the moons close to Uranus, you would see the sun as not that discernibly less bright than it is from here. It would be a little less bright, but nothing like the way people describe it. Oh, it would just be a bright star. If you looked at it, if you stared at it for a minute or two, you'd still go blind. So
Wow.
still plenty of sunlight there.
Wow. So, Paul, any final thoughts before the show ends tonight? Looks like you've got a shot in here that you were trying to show. I'm sharing your hangout.
Yeah, it's just showing a couple of the moons of Uranus there. Sometimes it's a bit difficult to really tell which one's which. I was trying to match a star field to it because sometimes you get the innermost moons actually obscured by the actual planetary disk. The spike, by the way, is nothing alien of any kind. That's called blooming.
Mm-hmm. And we might mention.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say that through Slooh, we see those moons changing position wildly because the innermost one, Miranda, completely goes around in just a day and a half, compared to our moon that takes a month to circle us.
I'll step through this little diagram, and it goes through one day at a time, and you can see it's enormous.
Totally different positions. Totally different positions. Even the farthest of them, the farthest away, take 2 weeks to make one complete turn, which is still twice as fast as our own moon. So through the Slooh telescopes, anybody who wants to see them, Miranda moves fast enough to see the changes hourly. We can actually watch this sucker going around that green world. So it's a very strange circumstance, but easily observable.
Yeah, it's nice. So we're down to our last 2 minutes, guys, in the show. On the Slooh.com site will end. Thanks for joining us tonight, and Bob coming on. Paul, are you still? Is there anything going on? I noticed our show's counting down. Are you still prepared to do something tomorrow, or is that? Do you have anything in mind for tomorrow night that you're going to be doing, or you don't know yet?
I didn't, because we've decided to reformat these shows a bit. So I'll probably leave tomorrow night up to you, if that's okay.
Okay. All right, we'll figure that one out. So yeah, guys, come back to the Slooh.com homepage, and we'll figure out what the next show is going to be. And again, please consider membership. It does support all the free programming we produce on the homepage. We get awesome experts like Bob to come on, as well as Paul to help us out and such. So please do consider it. Just click that membership link on the homepage, or go to the Slooh.com/MySky campaign and learn more about this app that's coming out. You know, it's going to be a fascinating thing. You're going to be able to one-touch command a Slooh telescope to get any image in the sky. So we're pretty excited about launching this. We've been working on it day and night to get it out, and we're making a lot of progress. So we're excited about getting that out soon.
Pat, can I just say one last thing, because I meant to say it earlier. I just want to say to people, somebody who'd been watching our shows and been looking at our Facebook group for quite a long time, but only asked the question yesterday, can people control these telescopes? These telescopes are live. They're available for anybody to join up and control in the same way that we've been controlling tonight. This poor lady had not realized that these are telescopes on top of a mountain that she can control. So please, that's what we're looking at.
Exactly. What
and
does
control easily. Control not by having to figure out where things are, but just pressing a button saying, I want Jupiter for 10 o'clock tonight, and the telescope will go there and you'll have it on your own computer, live images of Jupiter.
Exactly, and that's what we're doing with the iPad app too. To even take it to another step further, it's going to make it a lot easier, even from that to one-touch command a scope right out of the sky. So to see an image. So it's going to be really neat. All right, guys. Well, I appreciate you guys both coming on. It's a great show as always. For Slooh Space Camera, this is Patrick Paolucci. Thanks for coming on, and look for our next show coming up, most likely tomorrow night with Paul Cox. All right, guys. Good night.
Good night.
Yeah, it's late, so we appreciate you helping us out tonight. Bob, I think we should start the show out the same way we started before. And I want to see, are you green? It looks like you're you got your green look going. No,
It's changing colors depending on the mood.
Okay.
And
okay, there you go.
It's the night of the harvest moon, so how can it not affect us?
Exactly. Well, Bob's got this great green glow going on one of these backlights. So I'm hoping that it kind of matches what's going on with Uranus. But Bob, we talked about in the first show, and I think we should start out the second show this way. Tell us a little bit why I grew up pronouncing Uranus, because it throws me off all the time, and everyone I know calls it Uranus. We all think it's a funny name, especially when we were little kids. And even today, I was watching the chat rooms, and all the guys talk about the shows. There's never-ending jokes about Uranus this, Uranus, funny, but they're all thinking the wrong thing. Why is that? Why do we still pronounce it Uranus when it's really
sort
Uranus?
I don't know. It's an Americanism. If you look in the encyclopedia, if you look at any pronunciation,
To say, is it on a Uranus show? I've got to do some back-end stuff.
Don't get me started. I'm just getting good at not saying Uranus, man. I'm saying Uranus.
I can see it's after midnight.
You're already screwing me up. I was so good last shot. I only made one mistake. I was so proud of myself. All right. So we're live. Show's going to start in 3 minutes, guys. The show will start in 3 minutes. Counting down on the Slooh.com homepage. All right. Let me do this.
I do find that in the shows that I'm doing, there are just some words I just get a total mental block at. It's kind of 3 o'clock in the morning or something, and just can't spit it out.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
It's a shame about T1.
Oh, there we go. So is T1? It's too bad. So it's gone for the show.
Yep.
Okay. Well, it's all right. We got this other show. Show will begin in about 2 minutes, guys. 2 minutes. The Harvest Moon and Uranus opposition event. We're here tonight with longtime Slooh editor and friend and Astronomy Magazine columnist Bob Berman, as well as Slooh engineer Paul Cox. Paul will be controlling actually, he was controlling the T1, the Canary Islands Observatory. Unfortunately, that observatory that we've exceeded our wind limits out in that facility at the Canary Islands Observatory, but our T2 scope is still online, which will give you live views of both the moon and Uranus. Right now, we're looking at the moon. If you're on Slooh.com, you can channel select. As many of you know out there, that's where the main show takes place. So please take a peek at it at Slooh.com. That's SLOOH.com. You can also pin photos. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, all those great tools, social tools to keep in touch of what our next show is. You can also see this panel live. So, Bob, before we get started, thanks again for coming on. I appreciate you guys both being here. I know, Paul, it's very late out in the UK. It's probably, 3 in the morning out there right now for you, Paul?
Yep.
I'm gonna do my entrance again. See, I think people like that. I'll be like I'm Bob Barker coming out for Price is Right.
People do say that you pace up and down, Pat, like a polar bear stuck in a cage in the zoo.
I try. I gotta get a.
You got to nail your boots to the floor. That's what you need.
I know. It's a bad habit. I don't know. I'm trying to stop, but I get too excited on these shows. Here, I got a chair right here. I'll try to hang on to it. All right, guys. We're about 1 minute and 30 seconds out before we're starting officially. 1 minute, 30 seconds. We're 1 minute from start time. 1 minute. Right. Okay. Hi everyone, this is Patrick Paolucci with Slooh Space Camera. It is Saturday night, 7 o'clock Pacific in the West Coast of the United States, 10 o'clock on the East Coast, and 0200 UTC. Thanks for joining us for our second show on